Hi, Andrew. Thank you very much for joining us. I'd love to learn a little bit about some of the stuff you have in your book, some very interesting ideas. And just to get started, if you wouldn't mind sharing, your name and what you've been up to and a little bit about the book, that'd be great.
Absolutely, KP. And I appreciate the opportunity to rap with you a bit today. So Andrew Freedman is my name. The book Thrive came out earlier this year at the time of this recording. And, the genesis of the book, really the main motivator for me is I've been doing a lot of work around high performance, change management, organizational development and design for over 20 years. And what I continue to see is so many leaders at all levels of the organization who are working really hard, trying their very best, putting in great efforts to really change the way that people think about and actually do their work. And in some cases, it's met with decent success, but almost every leader that I meet knows that they're leaving some potential untapped, right? They haven't been able to, for some reason, translate talent and potential in their organization into tangible business outcomes. And because this is what I've been doing for so long, my co-author, Paul Elliott, and I said, we've got to get what we know out of our heads. We've got to get it into a book that isn't just interesting, that isn't just cool reading, but is actionable and practical. We wanted to make this something that when people read it, they could go, I understand it. It speaks to me. This is exactly what I'm going through. And I can put these things into use right away. And so that's, for Paul, he's been doing this over 40 years, for me over 20 years. So that's 60 years worth of experience that we jam-packed into this book to really help leaders at all levels change the way that their organizations perform.
Excellent. So can you help us get a little bit from the book in our brains, just in our short conversation? What's the big idea behind it?
Yeah, the big idea really is around the purpose of the leader and just getting everybody oriented to there is a singular purpose, and that is to create a barrier-free work environment. That's probably the biggest takeaway from the book, is that leaders need to be thinking about and taking action on how do they understand and uncover where the barriers to higher levels of performance exist, and then how can they, with and through their people, remove or at least reduce those barriers so that people can actually accomplish the things that they want to and they need to. It's like, remember, when you talk to people, or even heck in the work that you've done, how excited people are when they take a job. Their first day, they're so optimistic, they want to accomplish such amazing things. And then along the way, things happen. Work happens, the organization happens, and they find themselves frustrated or shut down or not having access to information or being unclear on expectations or not getting great feedback or not knowing where to find resources. And the big idea here is it's the job of the leader to eliminate all of that noise so that people can be as successful as they intended.
In your work, and maybe if you discuss it in the book, is it easy for a leader to know they're in that situation?
Yes and no. That's such a straightforward question that is hard to answer in this way. If a leader is really self-aware around the tried and true principles of high performance, then the answer is yes. It's very easy to see what's happening. But for many leaders, they're pretty removed from the actual work that frontline people are doing. And that's what makes it a little more complex, because many leaders, they're operating by memory. Well, there's a couple of problems. One is, in many organizations, leaders are individual contributors that performed well in those individual roles that were then promoted to leadership roles. And that's not necessarily the best way to build leadership pipeline, is take somebody that was good in sales and make them a sales manager, or good as a frontline leader and make them a VP. So there's a flaw there, number one. Number two is all the research points to when you haven't been in a role doing the work for at least for 6 months or more, you've actually lost perspective on what it takes to do that job really well. That's how fast things are changing today. Customer demands, external forces, advances in technology. We lose perspective. So you have leaders who are 1, 2, 3, 4 plus degrees removed from the actual work, the people who are really close to the customers, making decisions about how the work should be done. That's a problem. That's a problem.
And you mentioned that taking somebody who is good as an individual contributor and turning them into a leader is not optimal. What is the optimal path?
Yeah,
what's the solution?
It may not be optimal. What's optimal is, and we talk about this in the book through a process we call role excellence. It's really clarifying what is the value that needs to be created in any given role, and actually documenting that. We use a blueprinting process, documenting that in tangible outcomes that the role needs to produce, and then thinking about the very specific things that people need to do to produce those things. Then you can develop a very holistic yet specific approach to learning and development to help equip people to be able to do those things and produce that value. That's the best way to think about it. And then as you look at all of your candidates that could potentially play a role inside or outside the organization, you've got a very objective definition of what excellence looks like, and you can do some really targeted screening, skills assessment. You can look at resumes and job history differently to see, will this person actually be able to produce the value that's needed in the role, as opposed to, well, gosh, I know KP. He's been here for a while. He's a nice guy. He's worked really hard. I think he can do it. And you wind up promoting KP, and he wants to do a good job, but he's just maybe not equipped to do it. And that's a terrible recipe, because then KP gets disengaged. He feels like he's failing, and usually then we'll wind up leaving the organization at some point. And it just doesn't have to be that way.
So for somebody who picks up the book and reads it, what are they going to get out of it? What are they going to learn?
Well, they're going to learn a few things. One is, what are the 6 core elements of creating a barrier-free environment? They're going to learn that. They're going to learn how to create more strategic alignment across their entire organization. So get everybody really on the same page about what matters and what drives value. They're going to understand this process called role excellence and how to completely rewire their entire performance chain, from recruiting, interviewing, hiring, onboarding, development, career planning, performance reviews, one-on-ones. They're going to learn a whole new system that's very easy to implement. So they'll get that. Past that, they'll also get access to over 20 what we call accelerators. These are downloadable tools, they're templates. These are built from tried and true practices, real world application. People will get access to these things so they can customize them for their organization and begin using them right away.
And is there one thing that perhaps you can teach us in, let's say, 1 minute, something actionable?
There's one thing that I can teach you in 1 minute. Yes, absolutely. I'm going to unpack the role excellence profile process a bit in less than 1 minute, and you'll time me. So first, it starts with this, having a really clear strategy for the organization. Second, it gets to what roles are most critical in the organization to advance those strategies. Third, as you think about those roles, you want to look for roles where there's lots of people in them and there's a lot of performance variance. Those are the first few elements. Next, you want to study the people who are absolutely the best in those roles to get a clear shot of what's their mental model and how do they think about their work and how do they quantify the value that they create. Next, understand the specific things they do to create that value. That will help to create that blueprint. Once that's documented, leaders, anybody listening to this conversation or the summary of it, will have a really clear way to document what high performance looks like and then be able to hire better to it, train better to it, and hold accountable more successfully.
And can you share an example of how somebody has put this to work, what changes they've made?
Yeah, for sure. We did work with a financial services organization. They had just gone through an acquisition, and so they were bringing together these 2 very different cultures, 2 very different organizations with different goals. And so we studied, first, we worked with the executives to really understand how they were defining success of the acquisition. What does a successful acquisition look like? It wasn't just closing the deal. They were looking to get a heck of a lot more value for their shareholders and their stakeholders. So we worked with leaders to get alignment on what success looked like. They identified for us 6 roles that were most critical. So we studied those roles. We documented them through the process that I mentioned. We completely rewired their recruiting, their hiring, their onboarding, their training, all of those processes. What they found was they were able to close the variance gap. It was significant. It was over 30% gap between the people who were the best and the really good ones, not even the average ones, the really good ones. So we were able to help them close the variance in performance gap, which is significant upside revenue and bottom line profit. And just one actual manifestation of that was for the folks who were the sellers, the wholesalers. They were able to improve their closing percentage of new opportunities by over 10%, which is massive when you think about, you've got hundreds of people in this role. That's significant. And so that helped them recruit better, get people up to speed better, help improve the performance of the people that were currently in the role. And as a byproduct of all that, they moved their net promoter score, they moved their customer satisfaction score, they hit their revenue and their profitability goals, their free cash flow goals. year over year after working with us on this.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And just for the quick fire questions, what's your second favorite business book, assuming yours is your favorite?
Right now, because this is timely, I love Adam Grant's Think Again. He is a fantastic thinker, and this book really helps people just reframe the way that they think about what they know, how they think about things. And heck, we're recording this still in the middle of a pandemic, and if there were ever a time to rethink, and unlearn, now is probably that time. So I couldn't recommend that book highly enough.
And what do you wish you knew when you were 20?
What I wish I knew when I was 20 was to not think and play so darn small about what's possible, what isn't, what I know, what if I were bolder, then I probably would have accomplished even more and had more impact. It's not about making money. It's just, how many lives I could have impacted earlier, number one. And number two, I wish that I would have had people that helped me or that I would help myself really prepare for this phase of my life better. Family, savings, retirement, like really make sure that I set myself up better. And so, how I could help listeners, maybe take what I'm saying and put that into play is think about who you're surrounding yourself with. Get yourself around people who can make you better. Get yourself around people where you can really learn and transform, because Jim Rohn said this a number of years ago, you really are the average of the 5 people that you hang out with most. And so really be thoughtful about who you are connecting yourself with and who you're surrounding yourself with.
Great. Thank you very much for sharing.
My pleasure.